Welcome to another episode of Slay Stories. I'm your host, Unzube Ufodike, of this brand new show that spotlights inspiring individuals and initiatives championing diversity in their unique way while slaying in their lane. Our theme today is acting, and we are delighted to invite our guest, the one and only Cyril Inri. Cyril has been doing the acting thing for 38 odd years, known on stage, TV, film, radio, and a host of other media as a reliable pair of hands. He's been a regular in This Life. You need to watch that if you've not seen it, and The Bill. And he was nominated for a Best Supporting Actor TV BAFTA for his role in Cucumber. He also starred in the groundbreaking Noughts and Crosses. Welcome, Cyril. Thank you for joining us. Firstly, how are you, Cyril?
Well, I'm all right. I'm here in Barbados, and
Yeah, I know you had to travel to Barbados for a family matter, so my condolences. And
thank you,
But I do appreciate you making time to join us today. So if we can jump right into it, acting, as you know, it's an area that many people who are trying to break into can't figure out the steps to get into the space. You have 38 years in the business. Can you share some insights on how to make it in the acting world? And what is the acting world all about anyway?
Well, I mean, first of all, I would say, yeah, there are lots of people trying to break into the acting world, and I would say a lot of them should perhaps question why they are not breaking into the acting world, because if it's for fame and celebrity, then, well, a few of those will make it on that score. But mostly, I would say, if that's your reason, don't bother. If you really love it,
Yeah.
if you love telling stories, if you love showing off in a way.
Was that why you went into acting, Cyril?
No, I went into acting because it helped deal with a lot of stuff in my own life, really. As a kid, lots of things were going on. I was a child of the Nigerian Biafran War, the civil war in Nigeria. And there were lots of issues. I'm a Bajarian, as my friend Eddie Nestor calls me. My mother was Bajan, or from Barbados, and my father was from Nigeria. And that war caused us to move from Nigeria in its latter stages. And there were lots of upheavals. And so to deal with some of those things, when I was at school, a teacher saw me quite depressed one day, and he said, I don't know what the problem is, but whatever it is, it's probably covered in the pages of this book. And he handed me a complete works of Shakespeare. And he said, all human emotion, all human life encompassed here. So have a read. And sort of from that point on, really, because it did cover all human life in there, I had a place where I could escape to. And so I would escape into that. And it allowed me not to be me for a moment or two, and that, so it's, as I think I expressed, it's, acting is a bit like being on the psychiatrist's chair. You're constantly mining to find out who you are through other people and through other experiences.
Fantastic. So you're learning about yourself while you're projecting yourself into a new character.
Yeah, you're learning about yourself, and you're learning all about other people. The fantastic thing is about indulging in acting is that
Gotcha.
get to illuminate all these wonderful lives, many of whom you wouldn't have come across in just the daily passing.
And is there a process you go through to select which particular types of roles or characters you take on?
For me, two things really. One, the story, the life that I'm portraying has to interest me, and then if it scares me, if I think I, will have to really work hard to inhabit this role, to be this person, then that's always interesting. That's always a challenge. That's always something where I know I'm going to have to go and do the work. And if you do the work, sorry, I'm going to feel like I don't with my feathers,
like the chief.
Yes, swatting away this fly, So yes. So what was I saying before I became Kenneth Callender? Yeah. If I'm going to have to do the work, if it's going to challenge me in that way, that's always interesting. That's always a great way of testing oneself.
And in terms of working in the UK versus the US, which you have successfully done both, are there any particular unique aspects of being an actor here in the UK versus the US?
The US is a bigger world. It's a bigger place, and the roles, it's much more corporate in the US. For me, I find, I had to fight, to get to a place in the UK. And that was mainly where I grew up. That was where I started. And when I was first coming up, there were very few of us in a company. When I first joined the Royal Shakespeare Company, which was directly following drama school, there were two of us in that company at the time, of hue, of color, and one male, one female, and that was generally what used to happen in that year. Those years, they would take one. We have our one now.
Have your quota.
So we're covered. Yeah. Nowadays, it's very different. Nowadays, I'm very happy and proud that some of that early stuff, which didn't rest on my shoulders, it rested on the people that came before me as well. But it's been passed down, and now you have your wonderful actors like Daniel Kaluuya and various others, who are picking up Oscars and just running with the ball. Papa Essiedu, various wonderful actors, who are just picking up and doing that stuff. And I suppose it took the time of us being able to do those things, and I suppose groundbreak in many ways. When I joined the Bill as a regular character, it was a major, in a quiet way, a major coup.
Yeah, a major role on British television. Yes,
a major long-running role as a top cop. At that point, one of the highest-ranking, cops.
I remember
in British television. So yeah, that was a coup. That was something new and different and quite wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, and if we cross to the continent in Africa, there's, as you know, a burgeoning movie industry in terms of the number of films they make each year. Do you have any view on Nollywood and the content that comes out of Nigeria which is the
One, I
movie
would say
production
it's not
scene?
burgeoning. It's probably the biggest industry in the world.
Okay,
Bar,
the
bar
biggest in the
perhaps,
world now. Fantastic.
bar perhaps India. Who also put out a lot of product. Um, I think in terms of quality, that is improving all the time. And we have, I suppose, copyright issues within the continent of Africa as a whole and Nigeria. But that is getting taken care of slowly but surely. And I think more and more, I note a lot of people are, now traveling back to their origin countries, whether that's the origin of their parents or grandparents or their own, to indulge and partake and take the skills that they have learnt here and mixing that with the Nollywood talent.
Gotcha.
So things will change. One of the things about Nollywood, though, is that it is fast and furious, and and as in all African countries, we learn very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling, that will become the major market
Gotcha. And
in time.
thank you. And the final question for you, Cyril, before we let you go. What's next? What can we look out for? What can we expect from Cyril Inri?
When the pandemic struck, I had just finished the second episode of an Amazon series, which is called The Power, which is a Naomi Alderman book. Wonderful book. And I play a dad in that. And so we have been constantly trying to get back to that. I believe we will be shooting again in late July. But we were shooting in South Africa, or at least my character was. It spreads from the US, London, and Nigeria, or South Africa pretending to be Nigeria. And so hopefully we'll be getting back to that shortly.
Nice.
There are a few other things in the pipeline which I'm not allowed to talk about because I talk about them until there's, I've signed on the dotted line and the money is coming towards my bank.
Yeah. Well, we'll be looking out for you. We'll be following you. I know you don't do social media yet, but thank you so much for increasing our visibility and celebrating British diverse TV characters from Cucumber to This Life. We're in awe. I'm afraid that's all we have time for on this episode about acting with the one and only Cyril Inri. Don't go away. We have some more right after this. Welcome back to Stay Stories. Our theme today is writing, because whilst reading is fundamental, writing is transcendental. And we are delighted to invite our special guest, entrepreneur Hepsi Pemberton. Hepsi is a very active UK business founder who believes in the power of good business to transform society. She has founded several impact businesses since 2009, and in 2018, Hepsi founded the Equality Group, which is a diversity, equality, and inclusion business focused on the finance and technology industries. Welcome, Hepsi.
Hi.
Thank you for coming to the show. It's our pleasure to have you. There is an amazing book, which is now an Amazon bestseller.
Yes.
The Diversity Playbook.
Yes.
Do you want to share a little bit more about the Diversity Playbook and your background into authorship, as it is your first book?
It is my first book, and I'm very excited to have it out. It's the culmination, I'd say, of quite a few years of my work that I've been doing in this space, advising businesses and investing in businesses and seeing the importance of this topic of inclusion, diversity and
is.
equity. And having read a lot of the literature in the space, of course, to be able to advise these businesses on it,
You do, yeah.
I could see there was a gap for a book that was very practical and that was focusing on the how to do this.
Yeah.
There are many brilliant books that look at the why and somewhat of the how, but I wanted to lay out a sort of blueprint for leaders and businesses that want to do this well, and they want to do the things that they know will work. So what is the academic research? What is the evidence base for doing this within a business context so that they can really drive results through the business and avoid that damaging risk of diversity fatigue or resentment or frustration that can build up when people just see that maybe it's only lip service and actually, people aren't necessarily walking the walk.
I love that. So it's looking at it from a pragmatic standpoint and offering real frameworks that can be deployed in businesses that will actually show them that blueprint to get DE&I, to make it real within the organization.
To make it real, to make it embedded across the organization. So not just as employee initiatives or something that HR does, but really permeating the full business so that you get the benefits, you get the innovation, the productivity, the bottom line profitability, all the things that the studies show you can get, but you only get if it is fully integrated.
Can you share some of the tips and hacks? I know we haven't got too much time, and it's an amazing book, by the way. Get your copy if you haven't. It's on Amazon. How can people go through implementing D&I within their companies?
So there's a lot of hacks and tips in the book, but I start with leaders themselves and saying that the responsibility is on your shoulders to do this, because fundamentally this is about a culture change and setting the tone from the top.
Starts from the top.
It starts from the top, and it also starts from the inner work of an individual. So I talk through how do you go about this journey of becoming more inclusive yourself, because that's where it has to start. If not, it will not be authentic and it will not be effective long term. So the first 3 chapters are really looking at leaders as individuals and helping them to start to move on this development journey. Now, we're all on that journey. It will probably never be completed. But if you're committed to going on it, then once you start to put in place key pieces of communication, strategy, roadmaps, data measurement and management, actually people will see that you are wanting to do this yourself, that this comes from a real and authentic place in you. Because if they don't see that, they're not going to follow you on this, and things will go wrong later down the line, and it will be harder to fix it.
Brilliant. So starting within the leader from the top, and then pulling
it
out
goes
those.
out.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
One more question. Why is diversity so important to you on a personal note?
Yeah, I think it links back way into my childhood. My parents are missionaries in Zaire, which is now Democratic Republic of Congo. So very early on, I moved out of Leeds, council estate in Leeds, and moved to northeast Congo. And that immediately, at the age of 4, gave me an insight into how different people in the world live and broadened my horizons. And coming then back to the UK and moving around a lot, I think I just had a more of an awareness of difference. Not that I was always necessarily the different one, but being in different contexts really highlighted that. My mum was always a feminist. She was one of the first women in the Church of England to get ordained. And later on, both my parents came out as gay. So all of
both
these...
parents came out as
both,
gay?
Both.
Wow.
After having had 5 children.
Amazing.
In the church.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
these experiences over time really, alongside my career, I started in investment banking.
And we know what investment banking as an institution
Yeah,
as
so
a sector
diverse
is.
and
Not.
inclusive.
So not.
It's so not.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that was my early professional experience, as being in an environment where actually I was told to my face that I was a token, that I only got hired as a token. Not by the person that hired me, but by someone that clearly
One of
didn't.
your colleagues that was
Yeah.
obviously threatened.
Yeah, or just banter, I suppose. But I didn't mind. I was like, I'll take the token card. I'm very happy with this job and this experience that I'm getting.
Yeah.
But I think, yes, all of these things built into the influence and the value of diversity. I knew it mattered, and and that you got the best out of teams when you had diverse teams. I knew that, but not everybody does. So I wanted to teach more people. I wanted to educate more people on this.
Fantastic. So there's that personal connection based on your personal experiences, your professional experiences, and you wanted to obviously spread the good word and put it into a book.
Yes, but I do say, this is a guide, not a gospel.
A guide, not a gospel.
It's a guide, not a gospel, because I'm one of many voices on this topic, and I think there's still a long way to go. There's still a lot more that we need to discover and find out. When I was digging into the academic research, there's a huge amount on gender, and let's be honest, that spectrum is quite a white one as well, and there's a little more coming now on race in the last 10 years and a little bit on sexuality, but you can't find much on disability, you can't find much on socioeconomic difference. So there's still, I think, a lot of gaps in our knowledge and thinking more intersectionally about how diversity and inclusion can really benefit organisations. So I think there's obviously a long way to go, but I was trying to do the best with what there is and with what I know from practically advising businesses on the topic.
Brilliant. But I was curious to understand a little bit more about how you also went through the process of authorship. To write the Diversity Playbook, obviously your first book, and now an Amazon bestseller. How did you go through writing this?
Well, I think there was a starting point in writing more articles, actually getting into maybe some shorter form writing, so commentary around what was happening on this topic of diversity, inclusion and equity.
So all those LinkedIn blog posts were all...
Well, it wasn't, at the time, I wasn't thinking, I'm going to do this because I'm going to write a book. But because I'd started to do that, it removed some of maybe the fear of, could I write a book? Because I could mentally imagine it's just a series of articles. And because I'd been writing for the last few years on the topic, I was able to sort of break it down in that way. At the same time, the concept of writing a book is quite daunting for the first time.
I can imagine, of course.
I wasn't fearless going into it, but I got the advice of some friends and contacts who had written books, and got the advice that it would be really good to get a writing coach or an editor that would work quite collaboratively with me. And I did find someone that was very, very helpful in that way. And also a few sort of mentors and advisors that were happy to be beta readers. So they would read chapters, give me some feedback, so that I wasn't writing in isolation or in a silo. And that, I think, was particularly helpful.
So almost like an agile framework where you had MVPs of the book and chapters coming out.
Absolutely.
With regular feedback.
Yeah, and the other thing that was really helpful, I think, is just getting the title and the contents down. Once those were in place, actually, that gave a very clear framework for how the book would come together.
Brilliant. And the first page, I noticed the dedication to your family, to your colleagues. And do you want to talk through some of the individuals that you have dedicated your first book to?
Yes. My family are hugely important to me. We're very, very close. I mentioned them earlier. So they, an inspiration and a huge support to me. And my partner was amazing because actually I wrote most of the book through the last 2 lockdowns. And obviously, we were spending most of our time together. So it could seem a bit antisocial to take yourself off into your study and just write for days at a time. But he was wonderful and very supportive of that. And I sort of knew I had the book in me at this point, and having that time, that dedicated time at home. And you really need whole days empty, with nothing else in the diary. And prior to the lockdowns, I would not say I had many, if any, days like that. So it was a help.
Clear calendar days, because once you get into the zone, you need to churn out that content.
Yeah, and you just don't know exactly how long it's going to take. Some chapters write themselves faster than others, and you need to allow yourself that flexibility and freedom.
Is there going to be a Diversity Playbook Part 2?
I have got an idea for how I would develop it. I mean, I think there would have to be a revised edition as more research comes out, case studies accumulate. But yes, maybe taking it a little bit further and a bit deeper, because this is my sort of the introductory handbook. But I could see how you could go sort of more specialist and go for more expert advice on certain topics, say the area of retention and promotion and succession planning. I think that in itself could be a book, you know.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
yes, I think there will be at some point, but I'm not saying when.
That's a great title, retention, succession planning. I mean, especially when you work with smaller businesses, and many of the clients and companies you've engaged tend to come from the SME space. So I can see that being another bestseller on our cupboards. I'm afraid that's all we have time for on writing on this episode of Slay Stories. I would like to thank Hepsi, who joined us here in our studios for this writing episode on Slay Stories. Bye for now.